The Forgotten West, a land of sheriffs, outlaws, bounty hunters, and traders. While the most famous game set in the boundless lands to the frontier is Red Dead Redemption 1 and its sequel, there's a small title out there that is often overlooked, omitted, yet in my opinion is one of the best games ever developed in its decade. Today we're talking about none other than Call of Juarez Gunslinger. An arcade first-person shooter released 8 years ago, Call of Juarez is one of my favorite games I've ever played, and I do not exaggerate when I proclaim it to be one of the best games ever developed. It is extremely challenging for an arcade title to receive such high regards. After all, there is no big open world to explore, no side quests to embark on, no 40 or so hours of campaign to complete. Oh no, none of that. Even better, this game works smarter, not harder. But let's go with order. Let's start from the very beginning. I will talk about the plot more in depth after the gameplay, but I do wish to set the scene first. Abilene, Kansas, 1910. Silas Greaves enters a saloon after a long journey as he sits down for a drink. It doesn't take long before he's recognized as that Silas Greaves, the most famous bounty hunter west of the Mississippi River. The legends about him are plentiful, but do not believe everything you read, kid. As the stage set gratify the tales told about the talented veteran, Silas sits, whiskey in hand, and starts narrating his long journey. The campaign is divided into various chapters, 9 to be precise, where our objective is one and one only, get to the end without sparing a soul along the way. That's right, there's no stealth, no ghosts, no strategy, no time to waste. Our road is one and it's full of bandits to take down. Gunslinger is the purest first-person shooter you could ever play, where the gameplay, the gunplay, is fulcrum to the whole structure of the title. There's nothing more addictive than to shoot and reload your two cold walkers while running towards a regiment of red-scarfed men. There's nothing more hooking than to get 10 kills in a row with your trusty Winchester, ranking up your kill count by the minute, by the second. There's nothing more captivating than to clean the roads of Lincoln County with your stolen, powerful double-barrel shotgun that spares no one, gets the job done every time. The game keeps a high bitrate and it's your duty as a player to keep up with the pace or die trying. The Far West is a hostile land ready to release Armageddon to take you down. So why shouldn't you return the favor? Never have I ever had so much fun playing and playing again the same levels, to find new ways to master my skills and improve my shots. For every headshot you make, for every consecutive kill achieved, for every perfect takedown, you exponentially increase your final score. So no matter how good you think you are, there's always a new target to aim for. Call of Juarez perhaps does not offer players many gameplay options like modern titles do, but the one game style present is perfected to the millimeter. The game never feels unfair, but it is challenging, especially if it's your first time playing. Respawns are immediate and usually close to the action, never punishing the player too hard if they fail the first round. Ammo is limited, but never scarce, never stopping the action for scavenging the level for bullets. In 4 words, arcadeness at its peak. Sceneries are perhaps even more appealing than the arsenal at your disposal. Bank robberies, hijacked trains, Apache ambushes, manshafts, deserts, riversides, you name it and it's probably in Call of Juarez. It is next to miraculous how a 5-hour long game proposes so much variety, how every level feels unique and an adventure within itself. I have seen open worlds magnitudes bigger than Juarez linear maps, yet not all can keep up with Juarez cars. Ironically enough, there's an arcade mode separate from the campaign, where maps are filled with more enemies and fewer cutscenes. Personally, I believe this mode to be slightly redundant, but it is a nice touch having it available for players who wish to compete solely for the highest high score. I find it always nice to have more options to play levels in different fashions, even when it's not strictly needed. Ramming across ramps and train wagons is not the sole way to fight off menaces. What western game would it be without proper dueling? Like a true spaghetti western, main villains need to be faced off with fashion and style. At the end of most chapters, there's a face-off between Silas and the hunted men, where you need to keep your focus both to the target and your 6-shooter. Oh, and don't forget, only men of honor draw second. Now, this mechanic received mixed reactions from the public, and I do feel conflicted on how well it was executed. On one hand, there's no denying that the situation is iconic, and the mechanics are somewhat balanced. But on the other hand, it does get repetitive, and once you master it, there's no challenge left for the player to have. I've also heard that using a controller makes dueling just tedious, than harder. Gameplay is overall the strongest characteristic of the game. It's fun, and above all, fun. There is no better set of words to describe it. Often we forget that fun is the main reason why we play video games. Sure, some games have wonderful explorable open worlds, captivating characters and well-written stories, but... Hold on a minute. I didn't tell you about the narrative aspect of the game, did I? It is hard to have a whole session in the video regarding the narration of an arcade game. What hyper-complex storyline does the Gunslinger propose in 6 hours of campaign anyways? The developers back at Techland Games in Poland have used the most creative way to tell a tale. A method not only unique in its approach and well executed, but brilliant when studied under a lens. As alluded earlier, the game itself takes place in a flashback, Graves' narration of its intrepid journey. So far so good, an uncommon approach of storytelling, but nothing out of the ordinary. But the game does not use this premise to simply set its game earlier in time. Oh no, that would be too banal. Call of Juarez narration is Graves' narration itself. Let me explain. Throughout the adventure, from Mexico's arid desert to the Rocky Mountains, from the beginning of the level to the boss fight at the end, Stella narrates the story as it goes to the folks in the salon. All the stanzas, all the conversations, all the arguments take place in the present, meaning we're not playing the events as they truly went, but we're playing the events as they are told. Why does this difference matter? Well, because as Greek poet Homer taught us, our old tradition gets to get foggy with time. There are multiple instances in the game where the narration takes a toll because Silas misremembers an event, the others misunderstand them, another person imposes his version of the story, and so on. The conflict caused by the evolving tale quite literally changes the tale itself, and therefore the events in game. Take a look.
Out of nowhere, and there never seemed to be an end to them. Hold on, were you attacked by Apaches? What happened to the cowboys? Did I say they were Apaches? I said Clanton's cowboys attacked me Apache style.
The brothers paid dearly for their stupidity, but everybody knows they had it coming.
There's more to it than that. I read all about that day, so I know for a fact that it went down very differently.
I had a few ideas on how to get into that mine, but once I made my decision, I knew there was no turning back. So my first thought was to enter the nearest mine portal. I saw an entrance. Made sense.
The geniality of such narration is incredible, both at the direct effect it has over the gameplay and the meta-thinking behind this design choice. Usually in video games we are used to make unbelievable stunts, and while there is a suspension of disbelief that helps us identify oneself with the absurdity of the situation, it is still next to impossible to explain how in GTA we can kill the whole police department and still get scot-free after idling for a couple of minutes. Don't get me wrong, I do not wish to play a hyper-realistic game, nor do I believe realism is a net positive in all occasions, but suspension of disbelief sometimes has its limits. The smartness of Call of Juarez Gunslinger is that the player is not playing the events as they occurred, but rather he or she is playing the events narrated by Graves. The difference is that the narrated story can be as absurd and exaggerated as the narrator wishes to make it out. Silas tells the canteen that you face off 100 Apache soldiers? You will face 100 Apache soldiers. There is no need to care about the details, is there? Now, I'm not calling Call of Juarez the next literature masterpiece. In fact, the plot itself is quite banal and corny, even for spaghetti western standards, but I do praise the unique approach it took, and I would like to see it more often in video games. I do need to go back to that statement, don't I? The plot itself has some flaws indeed. It's not bad by any means, at the end of the day it's alright, but it's a very predictable revenge story filled with famous characters from the West like Billy the Kid, Jesse James and the Dalton brothers. It would have been nice to face off these characters multiple times before dueling them, to know them better, so to then feel more accomplished when you finally take them down. I do need to give prompts however to the conclusion. Of course I'm not going to spoil it, but there is a final decision to take before the credits roll that is well thought out, and both outcomes, both the quote-unquote good and bad ending, line quite well with the story narrated and do not feel forced in like in other video games. There is an honest reason why Silas would choose one over the other. From an arcade title like Call of Juarez Gunslinger, no one, including myself, was pretending much from the narration, yet the simple yet clean execution of the tell narrative approach is impressive. Creativity is often risky, high risk, high reward, and I believe Silas' stories deserve the best of awards. I decided to talk about the graphics as my last point for a simple reason. Images speaks more than words. By now you have seen a dozen or so minutes of pure gameplay running in the background, taking in the cel-shaded art style present in the title, admiring the scenery and the artistic choices taken along the way. The cel-shaded art style is more present these days, but back in 2013 few were the games that used it, and fewer the game that used it properly. Being an arcade full of flying bullets, storming explosions and fountains of blood, the choice of the art style couldn't fit better the game it's depicting. Fast, flashy gameplay requires having polygons easy to distinguish and enemies easy to spot. This aesthetics also fit well with the fast pace of the gameplay. By just looking at the recorded gameplay, there is an urge for me to launch up Steam and playing it again. There is something captivating in these colorful images that makes the player want to play more, something all games should do, especially arcades. The storytelling aspect of the game also links quite sublimely to the art style chosen. The play made in the narration suits the comic book style on the title, makes the scenes and traditions like this natural and spontaneous. I have a hard time managing the same cutscenes with a more photorealistic approach. The artistic department at Techland did a wonderful job at giving villains much needed personality. Before I complained that enemies came and went too fast, and this is still true, but these artful introductions and individual design partially makes it up for it, and makes every level more unique than the other. A nuance I only learned in my third playthrough is that when you play the game at its hardest difficulty, apart from the usual lower health bar and less ammo, the overlay is turned off. At first I didn't quite understand why, but after a while I realized how useful it was to see the flashy writings that indicate kills. Makes dueling harder too. This is yet another instance of how well the game was structured from the game design aspect. Using this art style for a timeless arcade was a smart decision on the long run too, since cel-shaded does not age and remains fresh after 10 years. Makes the game run smoothly as well from the technical standpoint. I never pissed off major frame drops nor bugs, but I did play the PC version, so don't quote me on consoles. I said earlier that graphics speaks for themselves, so perhaps it's better to take in the game for a bit and then jump to the conclusion. I could talk all day about Call of Juarez Gunslinger, but it's getting late and I'm afraid this salon will soon close. I strongly believe Gunslinger is one of the best games of its decade and playing it today is still a blast. The Techland Studios have outdone themselves with this timeless arcade. They've experimented with plenty of ideas in the gameplay, in the story and in the graphics, obtaining outstanding results. Are there some details that needed more polishment? Indeed, but as Silas Greaves has taught us today, details are just that, details. If you made it this far, it means that you watched the entirety of today's video. That makes you an awesome person. Not gonna lie, this is a format I'm not sure I'm going to keep. It's challenging to make these long essay videos, but if you like them, I'll bring them in. Let me know what other games would you like to see next, but until then, I wish you a wonderful day. Arrivederci.